So Chapter 4, Lesson 8, Part 2. We're still dealing with complex numbers, but today we're going to add, subtract, multiply, and divide them. So we're going to jump right into our addition and subtraction. So you can only add real numbers with real numbers and complex numbers with complex numbers. So you can't add a whole number and an I. So we can only combine this negative 12 with 4 and 10i with 12i. So you can only add real numbers with real numbers, imaginary numbers with imaginary numbers. So what is negative 12 plus 4? Negative 8. And then what is 10i plus 12i? 22i. And you always write your answer as the real number first, then the imaginary. So our answer would be negative 8 plus 22i. So since we're adding, we can just get rid of the parentheses because we're adding everything together. So it doesn't matter. Because we could say 2 plus 4 plus 3. The parentheses here don't matter because you're just adding everything together. So whether you added 2 plus 4 first or 2 plus 4 plus 3 or the 4 plus 3 first, you'd get the same answer. So parentheses, when you're adding, don't matter. They do matter when you're subtracting, though. So again, here we're adding, so we can ignore the parentheses. We have to combine our real numbers with real numbers, imaginary numbers with imaginary. So what are our real numbers here? 4 and negative 1. So what's 4 plus negative 1? 3. And then what are our imaginary numbers here? 6i and 8i. So what's 6i plus 8i? 14i. So that's our answer. 3 plus 14i. Okay, so when adding, the parentheses don't matter, but subtracting, they do. So we have this subtraction sign in the middle here. It's super important that we distribute this minus to everything behind it. So it's touching this parentheses, so we distribute it to everything inside the parentheses behind it. So the 7 plus 2i in front stays the same. Then when we distribute the minus to the 7, it becomes a negative 7. And then when we distribute it to the 5i, it becomes a negative 5i, minus 5i. And then from here, we do the same thing before. We could combine the real numbers with the real numbers, imaginary with imaginary. So what are our real numbers? 7 and negative 7. So what's 7 minus 7? 0. And then what are our imaginary numbers? 2i and negative 5i. So what's 2i minus 5i? Negative 3i. If we get a 0, we don't have to write it, so it's just negative 3i as our answer. Because we could say 0 minus 3i, but the 0's not important. We don't need to write it there. All right, so we got one more addition and subtraction. So what do we have to do first here? Awesome. We want to distribute this negative to everything behind it. So the front stays the same. We have negative 5 plus I. What happens when we distribute that negative? It becomes a positive 7. And what happens to the 3i? Plus 3i. Awesome. Since they were already negative, we change the signs to positive. What do we do next? So what is negative 5 plus 7? 2. And then we have to do the same with our imaginary numbers. So I plus 3i. Awesome. That would be 4i. Because our coefficient in front of the I is just 1. So 1 plus 3 would be 4. But it's not written Same reason that we don't write a 1 in front of an x. It's just understood that that's the coefficient. All right, now we're moving on to multiplication. This is where we kind of turn up the difficulty a little bit. So whenever we have two things that are multiplied to two things, we have to FOIL. So FOIL stands for first, outer, inner, and last. So we just have to follow this order when multiplying these together. So we want to multiply the first times the first. So that would be 4 times negative 1. What's 4 times negative 1? Negative 4. Next we multiply the outsides. So that would be 4 times negative 2i. What's 4 times negative 2i? We can multiply them. We just multiply the numbers out front. So what's 4 times negative 2? Awesome. Negative 8i. Next we do the insides. So next we're multiplying the insides. So that would be 3i times negative 1. So what's 3i times negative 1? Awesome. Negative 3i. And then last we have the last terms. So 3i times negative 2i. Negative 6. How many i's do we have? 1, 2. So I squared. Now we combine our like terms. So we can combine the ones with just a singular I together. So that would be negative 8i minus 3i. So what's negative 8i minus 3i? Awesome. Negative 11i. Okay, so then we have that negative 4 out front. And then here's the fun part. So whenever we have an I squared we learned yesterday is actually negative 1. So I squared is equal to negative 1. So this is negative 6 times negative 1. So anytime we have an I squared, we change it to negative 1. What's negative 6 times negative 1? Positive 6. So now here, do we have any more like terms that we can combine? Awesome. That negative 4 and positive 6. So what's negative 4 plus 6? 2. And then what comes next? Negative 11i. So our final answer is 2 minus 11i. Alright, so this next multiplication one is a little bit different because we only have one term being multiplied to 2. So the last one we had 2 terms being multiplied to 2 terms, so that's when we had to FOIL. Here, what do you think we have to do to multiply these? Just distribute. So all we have to do is distribute that 3i to both things on the inside. So what's 3i times negative 5? Negative 15i. Perfect. And then what's 3i times 2i? How many i's do we have when we're multiplying now? So 6i squared. Awesome. So anytime we have an I squared, what do we change it to? Negative 1. So what's 6 times negative 1? Negative 6. So this is negative 15i minus 6, but how do we want to write it? With the 6 first. So negative 6 minus 15i. So you always want to write the real number first. So the difference between this one and the last one was that we only had one term here, so we can just distribute. The one before, it was kind of like distributing on steroids, and it's called foiling, when you have two terms being multiplied to two terms. Alright.
Oh, wait, my count.
Awesome. 9 and 9 are our first terms. So what's 9 times 9? 81. What are our outside terms? 9 and 4i. So what's 9 times 4i? 36i. And then next we have our inside. So what's our inside terms? 4i times 9. So what's 4i times 9? 36i. And then we have our last term. So what are our last terms?
8 minus 4i.
So the last one in each set of the parentheses. 4i times 4i. So what's 4 times 4? 16. And how many i's do we have when we're multiplying? I squared. So now we can combine our like terms. What's 36i plus 36i? 72i. And then what can we do next? Awesome. We want to make this I2 a negative 1. So what's 16 times negative 1? Negative 16. And can we combine that with anything else? So what's 81 minus 16? 65? So 65 plus 72i. Is that in the right order that we want it? Yep. We got our real number first, then our imaginary number. What do we have to do here? Foil. So we start with our first terms. What are our first terms that we're going to multiply here? 4 times 3. So the first one in each of the parentheses. So what's 4 times 3? 12. Next we multiply the outside. So what are our outside terms? 4 and 4i. So what's 4 times 4? 16i. Next we multiply the inside terms. So what are our inside terms? 2i and 3. What's 2i times 3? 6i. And then we multiply our last terms. Which ones are our last terms? 2i and 4i. So what's 2i times 4i? Awesome. 8i squared. What do we do next? Combine like terms. So what are our like terms? 16i and 6i. So it's 16i plus 6i. 22i. What else can we do? The I squared turns into negative 1. And what's negative 1 times 8? Negative 8. So we have 12 plus 22i minus 8. Anything else we can combine? Combine like terms. So what's 12 minus 8? 4. So 4 plus 22i. Is this in the right order that we want it? Yep. Got our real, then imaginary. Bless you.